Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets say they have a plan and that the fans should trust them. Is it a good plan? Will Parkinson of Badlands and Turn on the Jets podcast joins me today to debate and discuss the Jets' offseason plans. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome to Jets Talk Now. I'm Paul Fiore. Thanks for joining. Please click like and subscribe. Today, I am very happy to have Will Parkinson on from Turn on the Jets podcast and Badlands. As I said in the beginning, there's a lot of discussion around the Jets' plan for 2026 and whether it's something that, as AG would say, we should trust and not to let go of the rope. And so I thought it'd be fun to have a discussion with Will and see where we agree and maybe disagree on some of these things. But Will, thanks a lot for joining. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I've obviously been seeing you doing a lot of good stuff, so I appreciate you having me as always.
Thank you, sir. So quick, Will, before we get into kind of everything that's kind of happened to this point and some of your perspective, in your mind, what is a successful 2026?
I think it's going to be pretty eye test-ish. I think that was kind of what we were hoping with 25. I think a lot of going into the year was you know it when you see it, and we obviously didn't really see much of it. There was a 5-week stretch where they kind of were just a normal team, but generally speaking, it's hard to put a win total on now of like what's successful. I know everyone has like a number in their mind. They could be a 6-11 team that's actually like really punchy and like you see a huge improvement, and it's like, oh, wow, they're actually pretty exciting. They also could be an 8-win team and look like trash. And I know that sounds crazy, but like really fluky, weird season where like they're not actually coached very well and there's no quarterback play and they're kind of just middling. Like to me, successful seasons, like the young players develop, the free agent signings and trades they make actually look useful. And there's guys that can be on this roster. And the coaching staff, especially, on the defensive side of the football. I know it's going to sound them fixing the defense would say a lot about Glenn, because I think offensive coordinator, if you can fix the defense from a coaching staff perspective and from a talent perspective, you give yourself a shot in 2027. And Glenn's probably here. If Frank Reich just does a good job and the defense sucks, then is it really a successful season for Glenn? It's not, right? Because that means he's probably fired because it's like he's called the defense. So to me, I don't know if there's a win total. Yeah, I think being around 500 would be probably a successful season in a vacuum. But it's really, to me, about the young players building a core that actually like looking like there's something promising there, whether it's for this coaching staff or another one. At least there's like something to work with where it's not this barren cupboard. And again, I know people will be like, oh, the only successful season is the first pick. If you go into an expectation of a season like that, it's never going to happen. It never works that way. If you get to the point where we were at this year and, they were at the end of the season, they're competing for the number 1 pick, then sure, that's a different conversation. Going into the year, I think it's eye test, developing young players, building a core, and honestly fixing the defense, because as much as everyone wants an offense, we can talk a ton of offense. The defense actually feels fixable, like right away. And I want to see some improvement there, like some significant improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that win total is a challenging marker for success. I mean, Adam Gase's first year, they won 7 games.
Right.
I mean, and we all knew he was a coach just waiting to get fired. It was just, terrible season. And, it's interesting to me because, I'm a diehard fan and I've never rooted for a tank before this past year. And go figure, the year that I'm rooting for the tank, there's one top end quarterback that's consensus. And then, picking second doesn't guarantee you anything. And now we look at 2027, and I think every list I've looked at, and obviously there's names that didn't come out this year. It's like there's like 8 to 10 QBs that could be first round grade quarterbacks in 27. And so what I'm worried about a little bit is the regime's mentality for what they're going to do this year versus the long-term value of what this franchise needs to do to have sustained success. And so I think a lot of people who are tankers going into 2027 are in the mindset of clean house, bring in an offensive head coach, you get the number 1 pick, and you build it for a long term. The problem is the Jets chose not to do that. So you can't just look at 2026 in a vacuum and say, just be terrible. And, coach is going to be fighting for his job. I mean, Aaron Glenn wants his job. I think the challenge, though, again, for me is, in a way, it's almost like I wish he didn't have a hot seat going into this year.
Yeah, me too.
Because I feel like there's a concern, at least in my eyes, that they might do things out of desperation to save jobs versus the long-term benefit for the organization.
Yeah. I think it's a big balance for Muji and Glenn, kind of in unison of because Muji's not a huge, from every report, at least, it's been they're going to be aggressive in free agency, but they're not going to be drunken sailors. They're going to be try to be a little calculated, add pieces, here and there, and make sure they kind of fill out the roster. But they're not going to be what they were last year, where it's 1 or 2 signings and everything else was for comp picks. But it also, I don't think they're going to go CJ Mosley, Le'Veon Bell, and those guys and just blow the top, and Anthony Barr. That said, to me, it's going to be, with these amount of draft picks, they can still be quite calculated and do both, because these guys are going to be, hopefully you need to get 4 starters in the top 44, and 3 of the 4 at least have to be pretty plus starters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they can do that without ruining anything for 27. I get the whole, there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks in that draft, and we'll see how many guys actually end up being really good and who doesn't, because there's, we do this every year. We thought 2026 was going to be that year, and it didn't end up being that way. And everyone always does if there's a really great quarterback, no one's not going to want to trade with you, and the whole thing. And I understand that to an extent. But I also think we've seen these quarterback drafts, Daniels and May and Williams and all these different guys. And it's okay, well, the Jets have 3 first-round picks. And 2018 comes to mind. The Bills in 2017 going to 2018
right.
is really what the dream scenario for the Jets is, in a lot of ways. They figured out they had the coaching staff, they had the culture, they figured it all out. They didn't have the quarterback. And 2018, obviously, they were terrible because they drafted Josh Allen, and Josh Allen was horrendous as a rookie.
Right.
But they traded him twice, and they had all this draft capital, and it ended up working out, right? So there's those scenarios, or it's the Giants scenario where they wanted to go trade up for Drake May, and they couldn't do it. But then they ended up figuring out the next year. And I mean, we'll see what Jackson Dart is and isn't. I think it's a little premature to call him for sure a franchise guy. I think he's shown enough that you'd be excited if the Jets draft Ty Simpson and he has a Jackson Dart first year. You'd feel really excited. And the Giants, even though I'm not a Harbaugh guy per se, they were able to get a top candidate in the market and all these different things. To me, I think you go in with the expectation of developing these young guys. Hopefully these guys play well, and you want them to be better than expected, because that means you're probably building something. And if it goes south, a lot of people be proven right that Aaron Glenn isn't very good, and they'll end up tanking on their own anyways. If Aaron Glenn's as bad as most people think he seems to be, then they're going to be awful anyways. You know what I mean? It's you almost don't have to root for it. I think that's where I always get a little perplexed, in the sense of root for them to be good. And if they end up being good, hey, it's great. It's awesome. And if they end up being bad, you're almost right anyways. But you're right either way. It's always the confusing one for me, to root for them to be bad, and then you're angry because they're bad, but then you're angry because they win, and it's it just gets a little confusing. So
yeah,
they have to do a really good job this year, no matter what. They have to address a lot of positions on this roster, because whether it's Aaron Glenn, Kevin O'Connell, whether it's some college coach we're not thinking of, whether it's some offensive coordinator, or previous head coach for 27, and Glenn's not the guy. The only way you're going to be an attractive opening, it can't just be relying on draft picks. It has to be, we have these 9 blue chip guys on our roster that anybody in the world wants to come coach. We're going to have all this cap space, and we have all these things that put us in a good situation. To me, it's just I see a lot of, don't do this. You can't do this and this and this and this in the draft. It's well, what do you want them to do here? They have to at some point get good football players that fit their system. And right now, they only have 5 or 6 guys that you're wow, they're not tradable. We got to keep these guys. There's a lot of guys that are maybe good or could be good.
Yeah.
I don't know for you, how many blue chip guys are on this roster right now? They need to double that probably this offseason to feel really good about whoever is going to be the coach in 26, 27, 28, and so on.
Yeah, it's funny. Since you went there, I might as well have the conversation around the draft and the quarterback. I've, it's funny. I've watched a lot of college football this year.
Yeah.
Probably every time the Jets are up for needing a quarterback, and it's been the last 2 years, I watched a lot of college football, and I just start, trying to pay attention to these guys. And last year, a good example, Dart was like a guy I was desperate for the Jets to move up and get. His mentality and how he played, and that kind of that dog mindset for me was like, here's a guy that's got 40 college starts. He just plays with an edge. I think he'd fit in well. He'd change some culture. And so I really wanted him. I thought it was malpractice of the Jets to not draft a quarterback at all last year. I just thought it was insane to me that they kind of burned some draft picks later. You just always should take a swing. The thing that I'm concerned about this year, it's funny, and I think you and I disagree here.
Yeah.
I saw a mock you put up earlier today where you had Ty Simpson, I think at 24, and I've heard you talk about taking a swing at Ty Simpson.
Yeah.
My big issue is, I don't dislike Ty Simpson. I feel like Ty Simpson, though, needs another year of seasoning before I can truly tell you whether I feel good about him. Because he doesn't have any measurables for me that are like standing out, And he only had 15 college starts. So like I look at it and go, in any normal draft, this is probably a second round draft pick. And unless you're the Rams, where you maybe draft him at 13 and you can have him sit behind Stafford for a year. The Jets infrastructure is such, and I know they brought in Reich, and I know they got Musgrave, but I think you and I both know this. The Jets get off to an 0-4 start. There's going to be
it's the Giants this year. They sucked in the first 3 weeks, so they brought Dart in right away, like 8 games.
Right, and at least Dart had 40 college starts. Simpson doesn't, and so I'm worried about we go through this vicious cycle where the Jets draft him at 16 if he happens to be there, or God forbid they move up to get him because they're worried he might go earlier.
Yeah,
and now they rush the kid, and we don't truly get a fair evaluation. And now we go into 2027 with a high draft pick. We've got 20 million. I think the 2026 class 16th pick is going to be somewhere around $22 million guaranteed money.
Yeah, they're just eating money again.
You're just burning. I mean, they're going to burn how much money this year and just
when they cut Fields, it'll be over $100 million in dead cap this year.
It's crazy. It's just crazy.
I will say part of the reason I think there was such an appeal about Muji. Obviously, he was a good scout, and the Broncos drafted really well outside of, where they could because of the Russell Wilson trade. But I talked about this when, everyone thought they were hiring the guy from the Bengals, and whatever. I'm not going to do the dunk on people thing. But I will say that part of the reason I was excited about Muji was he just dealt with the huge dead cap stuff in Denver, and they were able to navigate it really, really quickly. I mean, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago even, we're sitting there watching Matt Ryan versus Russell Wilson going, oh my God, they have 5 years left of this, and they have no draft picks. And 2 years later, they're number one seed in the AFC, and if Bo Nix doesn't break his ankle on a fluky play, like, they're probably in the Super Bowl. And I don't know if they don't win the Super Bowl, because they actually would have been a good matchup for Seattle. Like, Seattle probably wins. They're going to beat anybody. But then New England wasn't winning in Denver. Long story short, I really like Ty, and I probably am higher on Ty than most people. I don't think he's a slam dunk pick at 16, and I don't think that, like, anyone that's sitting there telling you he's 100% a franchise guy is probably a little out over their skis.
Right.
But I also think I don't know particularly why, but I think it's maybe a little PTSD, and I think there's a lot that goes into it. But everyone kind of watched the Indiana game and is going to be like, oh, Ty was really bad. And he wasn't great in that game. Granted, had the slip disc in the back, had the broken ribs, he had, a burst of sack in his elbow. Like, he's tough as nails. But part of the reason I think I like Ty more than most is because I think the Jets for so long have gone so clearly talent over any type of intangibles upstairs. And it's not just, are you smart? Because a lot of guys are smart and they come in the league and they can know X's and O's. Ty's not sensitive, and he's like, he can handle the pressure of playing at Alabama and being a 5-star. And like, there was a lot of pressure on Alabama this year. Like, him and DeBoer, he's a first-time starter. They lose week 1. DeBoer's going to get fired, and all of a sudden they're in the playoff and they go into Norman and they're down 21-0, and they come back, or 17-0. They come back and win. And Ty played really well. And I felt like the first 8 weeks or 9 weeks before the back injury, pre the first Oklahoma game, he was like definitely going number one. It was like him and Mendoza were like, you couldn't really pick. You kind of had your flavor, it felt like, at that time. Dante Moore wasn't really, I don't even think, a conversation to be the number one overall pick. He was a top 10 pick, I felt like. I don't know if you felt that way, but I felt like Moore was a guy that, like, as the year went on, his value went up. Ty's dropped a little bit. Mendoza kind of just he was just consistent all year. I just feel like Ty's accurate. He's accurate over the middle of the field. He's smart. He's not sensitive. He's not going to like get flustered by New York. He has things he needs to work on for sure. He is not like a perfect prospect. I think sometimes he backpedals at times, but I don't think that's like not coachable. I think that he's still early enough in his career. This is where we might disagree, and I think most people would disagree with me. If they draft Ty, the real dilemma is like he probably should sit for a year, right? Like he should be able to the Chad Pennington thing. But part of me is also like, I also just want to see him play and be like, hey, 17 games, like, dude, you could be awful, amazing. Like, just go figure it out. And like the whole year would be about developing Ty. If they drafted him, it's just a dicey situation because is Glenn going to have the patience to be able to do that? And it's not necessarily even his fault. It's just the situation of like the same thing with Dable. Like Dable kind of had to play Dart as quickly as he could because that was the only thing that was going to save his job. And unfortunately, Neighbors goes down, 13 plays in a Dart and things kind of spiral. But and Joe Shane weasels his way back into a job. But I just like, to me, Ty is a much more appealing prospect if you can get him at the end of round one. If he's at 24 and the Jets have already taken a receiver and an edge rusher, where like you're not burning it as much as at 16. I'm not opposed to it. I just would prefer it to be the Dart situation where you already have gotten two for sure good starters. And then Ty's like luxury, the way Jermaine was a luxury in 22. That to me is the real area for him. Even if he gets to 33, that'd be amazing. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
I don't think so.
He's going to interview well. He's going to look healthy at the combine. He's probably going to be back up to like 215, 220. And people are going to be like, all right, he's almost 6'2", 220. He moves well. He's healthy. And again, I'm not saying – I just feel like the problem with Ty is like there's something that people are like – I think everyone's still holding on to the Zach Wilson thing. Like he looks smaller. So like it's like you kind of get that in your head. I don't know if you feel that way, but like to me, again, middle of the field, he's a really accurate thrower. I think he's mobile enough. I think he's accurate. And I think he's got like enough – Rich was on my pod and, comped him to mobile Chad Pennington. And I was like, yeah, Pennington went 19th. Like that's fair, but the Jets – also had 3 other first-round picks in that draft, right? So, again,
that's right.
One of 3, it's a little different than it being one of 2.
Yeah, I think the way I view Ty, and it's funny because I look back at some of the things that I was tweeting about early in the college year. I had him and Mendoza as my 1A and 1B, like at the halfway mark.
Most people, like, realistically had those 2 guys pretty quickly. It was like, 4 weeks in, it was like, dude, Ty is freaking balling. Mendoza's balling. These guys go kind of coming out of nowhere a little bit from where they started the year.
I guess it's a matter of maybe it's the PTSD of not trusting the Jets and being able to develop him and give him
that's
an
very
opportunity.
fair, by the way. Like right now, like it's hard to be like, hey, let's just throw a nice 23-year-old kid into there and figure it out.
Yeah, and knowing where this franchise is after 15 years of no playoffs and a decade of not even being 500, our fan base is completely just. I mean, we're having a civil war amongst each other at this point.
I posted that mock draft, and if you look at the comments, I would say 70% are like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. And the other 30% are like, that's the worst effing mock draft I've ever seen. You should go die because that's so stupid. And it's like, it used to usually you like to be around like, it's like 50% like it, 40% are like, not really. And then there's the 10% are always going to hate everything. Yeah. It's so extreme right now. It's like very political almost. It's like, you either have to be like, everyone sucks. Glenn's terrible. Muji's awful. He hates his job. Everyone should just be fired. Or it's like you have to have green goggles on and be like, they're all great. They're going 17-0 no matter what.
Well, it's actually an excellent pivot to what I was going to ask you. Aaron Glenn was a really well-liked player here. I mean, and one of this is a guy that was, he played the right way to play the game. And I mean, I wasn't for him as a hire at the time, and it wasn't against Aaron Glenn as much as it is. I just felt like, and maybe this is a bigger conversation about the Jets having the ability to even get these types of guys anymore, the guys that have the background and the experience, but like bringing a guy in here at a time where this organization is where it's at, where there's no patience left after 2 years of Aaron Rodgers and all of the failed hope that didn't come with it. Yeah. It's a massive job for a guy without the experience. And I just didn't think there would be any wiggle room for him whatsoever in the fan base, but did I expect the polarization that's happened since he became head coach? Like, it's crazy to me. Like, I've tried to be pretty measured on Glenn, and I thought once they were 0-7 and then they traded away Q and Sauce, like he's coming back for year 2. So why are we even arguing about year 2? But man, people like have venom for him like I've never seen. And maybe Gase year 2, but like everyone knew Gase was getting fired at the end of year 2.
This is different level. It's like there's like a real anger.
What do you think? Is it just because of where we are as an organization at this point? Like the fans are just fed up and done, or did Glenn do something?
I think it's a mixture of a couple of things. I think it's 15 years is 15 years, and I think there's a large part of that just like you can't ignore. And Glenn's paying for the sins of a lot of the people before him, and that's the weight that comes with anything, right? Like you're the president before you. You're paying for their sins, whatever people were angry about. Like, even if you have nothing to do with it, it doesn't matter one way or another. People are going to be angry with you, right? It's the same thing with the head coach, quarterbacks, whatever. I think going from 2021 coming off Gase, all this excitement, you draft Zach, and Zach's already terrible. But like everything else is starting to look, they draft 2022 and everything gets exciting right away. And they start out hot. They're 6-3, 5-2, 7-4. They lose the 6 in a row to end the year. Zach's horrendous. He gets benched 12 times. He's a loser. Everyone, he starts blaming his teammates, the whole thing.
Right.
Then you go into 23 and it's like, our team's really good. It's just a quarterback. And we think we have the coach. Some people were kind of out on Saleh, but most people are like, we have the coach. And Zach kind of covered up a lot of Saleh's issues. They get Rodgers and it's like, we're going to win the Super Bowl. And I think people genuinely were like actually excited for a time of like putting real expectations in their own head. Like a lot of times, like the Jets will get expectations, but the fan base doesn't have them, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
It was just culmination, hard knocks, whatever. Rodgers, the injury happens. And then, like, even throughout that year, they actually start off kind of decent. And then it all craters. Again, Zach's really bad, and we go on and on. 24 comes back, and again, it's rehashing history here. But then it's like you're kind of heartbroken, and you already know it's going to, like, probably not go great. But, again, they start off 2-1. They beat the Patriots by 100 points. Rodgers looks vintage Rodgers on Thursday Night Football. And everything obviously ended the Denver game. And at the end of the first half, Rodgers gets hurt with the knee and the calf, and, like, he never was the same. I think it's the mixture of, like, so much – disappointment. All of a sudden there's all this expectations and it kind of is working, and then it just falls apart. And then it's like Glenn comes in and there's not really any expectation, but he's going to save everything because, again, it's the Rodgers effect. It's like, all right, we don't have the quarterback, but now the head coach, it was all Saleh's fault. And now Glenn's going to fix it. He's not able to fix it year one. The one thing that I think is difficult, and I think I wish people would kind of not give Glenn slack, because, again, some of the stuff at the end of the year, even if they were tanking, was like, geez, man, like this is really ugly. I wish Glenn would have done a little better job of setting better expectations.
Yeah.
Early on, I asked him at the combine. I literally asked the question, and it was like, "Oh, we're going to be good forever, and we're going to be good consistently." It's like the stuff you want to hear. And I don't blame him for being difficult with the media and stuff. Like that's a lot of guys do that. Like there's a lot of coaches that aren't buddy, and just because you're buddy doesn't mean you're a good coach. Kyle Shanahan's as prickly as it gets with the media. He does nothing, and it's like, fine, McVay's great with the media, and he's really good. You know what I mean? It doesn't. Mike McDonald's a horrible interview, but he's an amazing football coach. Long story short, though, is like I need at some point them to show. That's why this first 3 weeks of the offseason, even before the draft, is so crucial for this regime. And like no one's going to care until they win games, right? There's a part of the fan base that either A, never be happy, or B, won't be happy until they win games. That said, if they go out early on in the offseason and they take care of some of their, the AVTs and Breece Hall stuff, and they take care of it swiftly, and it's like there's a resolution right away, it doesn't get drawn out, and then they go into the free agent market, and the first day they actually sign a couple plus starters, and it's like, oh, the Jets are actually like they're going to try to win. That would at least get people, I think, somewhat excited. I think what they're not going to stand for, and even if it's a nice calculated measures approach and the whole Joe Douglas has his price thing, they would just sign Alex Anzalone in day one of free agency, and that's it. And it's like 2 years, $14 million. And it's like, oh, the Jets are monitoring the market. I'm not saying, again, it's not to be stupid here with your money, but like you got to give something to that locker room, that family. Like Garrett Wilson needs to be like, oh, wow, we're actually trying to win a little bit. So I'm not going to get frustrated. So again, like I think that all this stems from some people didn't want Glenn at all. And I think that's part of it. I think there's a lot of dynamics outside of football that unfortunately have to do with some of the stuff that goes on with some of the fan base, and that's every fan base, and it's unfortunate. I think there's the defense versus offense thing. I think it's Glenn's very brash and all these different things like that. He got rid of Rodgers, which a lot of people were hanging on to the Rodgers thing, and it's like there's just this culmination, man, and like Expectations to no expectations to Super Bowl expectations to all comes crashing down. And then no expectations last year. They were bad. Glenn was kind of a dick in the beginning and he got rid of Rodgers, and everyone listened to what Rodgers said and just took him for his word, which is comical to say the least. And then it just culminated in they were 3-14 and they traded away 2 franchise players halfway through the season. So
yeah,
it's a bad mix.
It's interesting because, then you have people who are pretty pro Muji.
Can you explain to me why people still are defending Rodgers in this fan base? Like, what did he do for the Jets?
It's a very tricky, this is a tricky question for me because I'm like,
I love Rodgers. My favorite quarterback I've ever watched.
Yeah, he's my favorite quarterback I've ever watched play. Right, like he's my era's guy, and so
I hated Peyton. I hated Brady. I kind of liked Breeze, but he was irrelevant as a Jets fan. It was like Rodgers was going to be able to like kill off the GOAT Brady conversation.
You know what's funny? Well, like when the Jets were flirting with Derek Carr and then Rodgers was in the background, I remember having this conversation with my father and my brother. Yeah. And I'm like, I'd rather them just go get Derek Carr because I don't want Rodgers as a Jet. I just have a feeling this isn't going to go the way I would want as a Rodgers fan.
You know what? It's weird. I'm a Nets fan. And I'm Kevin Garnett and Vince Carter, my 2 favorite basketball players ever. And they traded for Garnett. And it's the same thing. They traded way too much. They sold out the franchise for Paul Pierce and Garnett when they were past their prime. And I remember being like, okay, I've now had all my favorite players play for the Yankees, pretty much, outside of Barry Bonds. But like, he was never going to play for the Yankees, and Griffey. The Nets get Kevin Garnett. Zlatan never played for Bayern Munich. But other than that, like all my favorite players have played for Bayern, which is really cool. And I'm like, the Jets are going to get Rodgers. This is like perfect.
Right.
Like, am I an idiot here? Like, there's no way this is going to work, right? And you convince yourself, unfortunately. That's what happens.
Yeah, and I think the reason why people defend Rodgers, and I'd be guilty of this too, is everything was, and I get it. He was given his guys, they won 5 games, and so it's very easy to scapegoat him, which is what I think the people who are anti-Rodgers scapegoated him for the year. And the problem is, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. He wasn't the guy that we thought we would get, but he came off of a year where he had an Achilles, so he wasn't going to be that guy. I think our expectations were too high, number one. Number two, Woody gave him everything he wanted, which was a mistake. Like Pittsburgh didn't do that.
No, they said you're on the team, you're not the team.
Yeah, and so like he owns that because he wanted these guys, but there was a narrative that it was all his fault. And he was terrible culturally and all those things. And I just think that it was overblown. So I think that there's these harsh reactions in the fan base in general. There's no measured context any longer with any of these discussions.
No, it's difficult. I think the Rodgers thing to me is, again, I don't think he's 100% to blame. I think there was a lot to blame. I think Saleh and Douglas were pretty checked out going into 2024. I think Saleh should have been fired after 23. I think Douglas probably should have been fired after 23. Yes. Mike Vrabel would have been their head coach going into 24 with Rodgers for a year, and maybe it's a 2-year run. I think, unfortunately, they catered a lot to Rodgers, and they went did a little 4 or 5 steps too far. It was like some of it made sense. You're going to have to get Hackett. You're going to have to get Lazard, but you didn't have to like Turner and Cobb and these other guys and Adrian Amos and all these guys. That the problem is they ended up playing. That's like, it's one thing if they don't. When I signed Cobb, I remember being like, oh, if he doesn't play and he's just a locker room 6 coach and he's kind of just there to hang out with Rodgers and fondle, on the offseason, like, cool, it doesn't matter. But then he ends up like starting right away, and he's like getting red zone reps over like young players, and you're like, all right, this is not going to go well. The Rodgers thing that was always difficult for me is like, I feel like the Jets, again, to your point, they should have just cut him and not even made a statement, not even done it Rodgers' way, whatever. They should have just literally released it and done the whole thing. They went above and beyond to make sure Rodgers wouldn't get pissed at them with the press release. How you want it? I know this for a fact. They're like, how do you want this release? We want to make sure you do it on your terms. We don't want to do all this different stuff. They were going to do this whole thing right after the Super Bowl. And then Rodgers runs to Jay Glazer and does that, and then goes on McAfee like 2 weeks later and just destroys the Jets. And it's like, that's the stuff to me. Like, they had him in person because he complained so much when he left Green Bay that they didn't have him in person, and they couldn't get a hold of his phone, and they FaceTimed him. So the Jets were like, let's have him in person. First of all, he was already coming here for a charity event. And then they were like, let's have him, let's do it in person. And I think the thing that bothers me the most is everyone avoids this question. And again, I love Rodgers. I used to love Rodgers way more than I do now. I just think that I have a bad taste in my mouth from the way it went. And I'm sure in 5 or 10 years, I'll be like, wow, he was amazing. And I'll get it. That's what happens though. And I think you earn more respect for some of these guys, as they retire and they move on and different things. But, Glenn, I guess, asked Rodgers, does he want to play? And he's like, I don't know. And it's like, the drama that would have been ensued last offseason of the Rodgers watch for weeks and months. And like, I don't know. I just, that's the stuff that it frustrates me because it's like, dude, if Rodgers went in there was like, I want to play, I'm going to take a pay cut. You're going to be able to eat some of the dead money. I don't want you guys to be screwed here. I want to play one more year and make this right. And like, everyone was all in. I would have been pissed if the Jets were like, hey, like, screw you, man. That would have been annoying.
Yeah.
It wasn't really all in. And the Jets were like, we're good. And then it's like turned into the lol Jets thing, which I don't know, man. Like, sure, the Jets they embarrassed themselves enough. And I said this about the Muji thing with the Senior Bowl, which he wasn't at, obviously. It's like the Jets make fun of themselves. Sometimes I feel like people go out of their way to like pile on 9 times. It's like, you don't even need to do that. The initial Jets thing was the joke of it all anyways. You didn't have to make it worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think listen, I think the reality is, there was a lot of noise. I don't think Glenn wanted Glenn. I don't think Rodgers wanted Saleh fired. There was this.
He wanted Saleh fired. Saleh let him do whatever he wanted. Why would he want him fired?
I honestly feel like the relationship with him and Woody, between Rodgers and Woody, was so cold and not good that I don't know if
Saleh did. I know people remember this, but when he went to Egypt and Saleh aired him out, I think that was the one. Because again, this is to your point. Sorry, I mean to cut you off, but this is the one point that I think you made that it's so spot on. They let Rodgers get away with whatever he wanted in 23.
Mm-hmm.
Show up when you want to. Don't show up when you don't want to. You'll get whatever players you want, whatever coaches you want. You practice when you don't want to, like whatever. They did all that stuff. And Rodgers, was a good boy for a little bit and said all the right things, did all the right things. To get him back in line when he took advantage, because that's what, you give a narcissist an inch, they're going to take a mile. And they let Rodgers get away with going to Egypt. And instead of just treating him like, if Rodgers didn't have that luxury, he wouldn't have done that. It's just, that was Rodgers' way of doing his thing. That's what he's always been about a little bit. And Saleh, instead of like keeping it in-house, tries to gain back power and be like, it's my locker room. And he airs him out in the media, and it turns into a 3-week story that never had to be. And then they kind of were beefing a little bit just of like this power struggle publicly. They take a little, digs at each other, but they don't think they wanted each other fired. I think they both knew that they were their own lifeline to keeping their jobs in 26 for 25. And then Joe Douglas was just sitting there leaking articles how he was just looking forward to fishing instead of being a GM. And it's like, I don't know, man. You traded a 3rd-round pick for Hassan Reddick. It almost was a 2nd-round pick if he, showed up to minicamp. Like, that's, I don't know. That we could go on and on about that.
No, I know. Yeah. So, I mean, but bottom line is, the whole thing was a fiasco, and I think it's led further to the dissension amongst the fan base. Personally, with the coaching staff, I feel like this was very calculated on Glenn's part. This is at least the way I view it. I'm curious where your head is. So, I don't think he wanted to be the defensive coordinator in any way. I'm confident that was probably from the top. I think what probably happened, this is just the way I envision it, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because I don't think Wink Martindale would have been a good choice. So
no, me too. Actually, again, I was going to say they end up with the right probably guys. They just, the way they came about it was like very.
The process was a disaster. But so like I look at it and I go, okay. He and Woody probably met, and they had this conversation. He still wanted to be the CEO coach, and so he wanted to bring in a DC. I think Jim Leonard or something like that would have been great. But I think the reality is Woody was probably like, I'm not going to pay for this role and for this role, and everything that we've all talked about. So he makes a calculated decision to go and get a Duker who's his guy, who understands his philosophy, will help him with the game planning, will be able to be an apprentice, essentially, DC under him. Because I think the way Glenn's long-term vision on this is he's got short-term and long-term thinking. Short-term is, I'm going to own the defense. I'm going to call the plays. I'm going to get this right. I'm going to bring in some young guys that I know will kind of align with me. Plus, he's got Dunbar back, which was a great move. But with the hopes that long-term he can hand off play calling again. Because I don't think I don't think he wants to do this forever. I think he envisions this as get right year one, maybe year two, I can go back to not being a DC. But if I'm going to do that, I need someone on the offensive side of the ball that I can just entrust with everything. And so I'm going to call my buddy Frank, and I'm going to ask him to come on board. Now, my thinking is he probably wanted him to come on to be an advisor to help Tanner Engstrand, but I don't think he wanted to fire Tanner Engstrand. I think what probably happened was Reich wanted to call plays. He wasn't going to come here to just be an advisor. And when you go and you tell Tanner Engstrand you're going to lose play calling, he's like, well, screw it. I'm going to go be a passing game coordinator somewhere else. And I think that's what happened. So it really got messy.
Yeah.
But like, that's how it feels to me. So it's like Glenn is basically in this save my ass mode right now, which is I've got the defense. These guys, I kind of feel they'll learn under me, and then long-term they can take over. And on the offense, because I can't pay as much attention now, I'm handing it to my buddy who I feel I can trust. He's been a head coach. He's got the resume. He's bringing in his QB coach, who's been a QB coach since Jeff George was in the league. This is a way to get to year three.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, to an extent. I don't think you're wrong for a lot of the inclinations in a sense. I think in an ideal world, he could have demoted Tanner, kept him on the staff. Frank could have been the play caller, and Engstrand could have learned under him, not lost his title as OC, but like Frank was really the play caller, and give him a year to kind of step back and like regain the trust. They have an improvement. Frank's there for 2 years. Tanner takes back over, and things like that. I think on defense, hey, Wink Martindale's done this. He's an experienced guy. Like he runs a similar scheme in a lot of ways of just like this pressure, a lot of man coverage, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Well, really veteran coaches on both sides of the ball. We're not going to take any risks here. We're going to raise the floor. Again, Wink in a short stint for 2 years is fine. Frank probably for 2 years is fine. It was more of like, I think everyone was like, hey, we're replacing a veteran with another veteran and things like that. I think the defensive staff looks really promising. Like I think if you're objective about it and you take off the Glenn blinders for a second, like Glenn was at worst, he was nominated for assistant of the year 12 months ago as a defensive play caller. He had a top 7 defense in DVOA, and EPA per play was even higher. Like, they lost 17 players on that defense that all went to IR. And like, he was really good. That's why he's part of why he got a head coaching job. I'm not saying he's an amazing DC. I think he's right. Solid. He's good. Let's just say he's the 14th best DC in the league. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's an 18 spot upgrade from what they had a year ago. And Dunbar is far better than what Washington is. Washington, I think, was the biggest liability on the staff a year ago. Very archaic thinking. Everyone regressed outside of Briggs, who was probably just getting better on his own from just playing more.
Right.
Slowick's a well-renowned guy. Like, he's a guy that a lot of people thought was a really nice hire. I think Duker's, everyone from Detroit really liked him. And, then he goes to Miami, gets a promotion, and they got better with him. So in the secondary turn, like Ashton Davis was good last year again. Like, and again, I'd bring Ashton back and have him just like be your third safety and take the football away. I don't really understand the thinking of like Eccles and Davis were the only two guys that caused turnovers on this defense and in a sub package role, and they couldn't let them walk for $1 million each. But my point is overall, like the defensive staff, I think, they pulling a linebacker coach from the Texans, like, okay, like those linebackers play really well. Al Shire has never been as good as he's been at this moment. Toa, however you pronounce the last name, like he's gotten better like the staff looks good on paper defensively, and offensively, it's probably a wash, unfortunately, because like Reich is an upgrade from Tanner as a play caller in 2026 of just like in a vacuum. The reason Tanner's exciting was like he's 38 years old, and you're like, hey, with more and more experience, he could be here for 4 or 5 years. But at the same time, like, and him and Frank as a duo would have been really exciting. I think what people are frustrated with is like the offensive stuff. It's like really veteran heavy, which I don't think is a bad thing, especially if you're going to have a young quarterback at some level, even if it's not a first round pick, like just risking with they've had a young staff on offense for a while now, and it's just never really worked. The only guy that they went with veteran was they just ran Rodgers offense with Hackett. And then they got rid of him. They went right back to another guy who's a younger play caller and Downing. It's like, MLF again, like showed some signs. Him and Tanner to me are very similar in the aspect of like the concepts are really good. There was exciting moments.
Yeah.
But I just 3rd and 5 or less, like they were awful.
Oh,
And
awful. I agree.
With Reich, like I don't know if they're going to be great on 2nd and 11. I don't know if the passing concepts are going to be what people want. But I know on 3rd and 5, Frank Reich's going to draw up mesh and they're going to gain 7 yards. And I'm going to be more than happy to see a normal play call. And like I don't know, man. Like if they go to Brissett, Kirk, Carr, whoever it is, like it wasn't going to probably work as well with Engstrand because it's like that's not I don't know. I just will see. I'm not confident in the offensive staff is like they're such an upgrade. Like Seth Ryan might be good. He might not. I actually have no idea if he's good or not because no one does, unfortunately.
No, and again, I think if I'm thinking about the way Glenn's thinking about it, much like with the defense where he's saying, get these guys where I need them to be, and then I can eventually hand off the play calling duties. I think their swing for the future is Seth Ryan. And it's like, okay, I'm bringing a young guy under the Ben Johnson kind of, tree. Let's him learn under Reich. Reich's not going to be here more than 2 years. If Ryan is great, and I've made my 4th year as a head coach, which right now I can't imagine envisioning that, but let's just say we did. There's a world where Seth Ryan becomes an offensive coordinator, right? So I think that there's the possibility of the way he's structured it, that's the young guy you take the swing on. And I don't mind that, right? Like, again, this is where it's funny because fans, like if I put something out there that says, this is not the worst staff that's ever been put together, like some of you guys say, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm a Glenn apologist. It's not that. I'm trying to put myself in the psychology of where Aaron Glenn is and removing bias. And I say to myself, this is a man who wants to save his job. He doesn't want to win 3 games this year. How is he going to do it? Raise the floor, which is what you said, right? I had Frankie V on, and he said the same thing. We're aligned on that. So whether I think that's the right move long-term for the organization, I think is a fair debate. And we can talk like there's an argument to be made. And I'm not saying that I'm here doing that right now, but you could say, look, they're better off winning 3 games this year, blowing out the entire staff, getting the first pick, and getting a generational franchise quarterback moving forward. But
there is an argument to be made that like it's not. I don't begrudge people for making that argument. I just don't think.
Me neither.
I just don't know if like it all works the way. Like when you try to do that, you have to be so. Like the Dolphins tried this as hard as possible, and they literally lost draft picks and got fined because they tried to do it so well. But then they ended up like being a punchy 5-win team. They ended up with 2 anyways, and you can argue about it. But at the time, I think everyone was like, wow, they have the coach and they have the quarterback. And obviously, again, Flores with a young quarterback's a disaster. Good coach, but not with a young quarterback. And Tua, was never the same after the hip. To me, I think on offense, having a veteran staff allows you to raise the floor, which this offense getting to be the 22nd best offense is a huge upgrade. Like it's insane, but it's a huge upgrade. I genuinely think defensively, if they get the right talent in here, they should be able to be an average, like the 16th best group in the league, which is a monumental increase. And special teams, they should be good. And it's like, hey, if they go 7-10, even if they don't have the quarterback, but they have the 3 first-rounders, the Colts end up picking 9th, the Jets pick 10th, whatever. We're just making up for the lack of a better term. And the Packers or Cowboys, one of them finishes like, I don't know, picks 19, 20, somewhere in that range. Like, if you want to go up and get a guy, and you can only move up to 3rd, but it still nets you one of these elite, nets you CJ Carr as opposed to Arch. I don't know. Like, that's like, it's still an exciting prospect. And if it's Glenn keeping his job, CJ Carr will still be appealing the following year for the next quarter coach, or it's another coach they bring in and O'Connell gets fired. Although I'm slightly lower on O'Connell than I think I don't think he's a top 5 coach. I think he's closer to 12 than he is to 5. But to your point, like this is about raising the floor, getting a lot more talent in here and being like, hey, we had no talent last year. And you can argue whether that's true or not, because I think there was talent. Like, Ross is a really good player. Quinnen played way better when he went to Dallas. Michael Carter was way better in Philly. Like a lot of these guys left and were much better. That said, the staff did do a decent job. Glenn did a decent job, or some of the coaches really just banjo. And I guess Sean Jefferson gets a little credit for A.D. Mitchell being better than he was in any, but it's like hard for me to – it's kind of the Briggs argument a little bit, where it's like he just played more, so maybe he just is like actually not a bad player. I don't know if
Well,
that's
he was also with Schwartz and he was an ascending player.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And AD Mitchell was a top 40 pick 12 months or 14 or 48 months or whatever, 24 months prior, and it was like, I don't know, maybe he just played a lot. He talked about it. I don't know who he was. I think he's Asman, but he was like, yeah, I haven't played that much since college, so it was like I was kind of out of shape in terms of like game shape of like I wasn't playing 80 snaps a game in Indy, so it took me a little bit to get used to it. Which, again, exciting player. He should be your receiver 3 or 4, not your receiver 2.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, to me, this is whole off season's like, please just add as much talent as humanly possible, and like whatever happens in 26, we'd probably end up working out either way. It's like Glenn's either going to be the guy, and we're all going to be like, thank God we don't have to do another coaching search. We actually figured it out, and like things are working, or it goes horrible, and you're having the number 1 or 2 pick next year in a draft with 8 quarterbacks, and you can mess around and be like, hey, we could trade back, we can trade up, we can stay put. We have all these options.
Yeah.
To me, the Muji thing, I've gotten a lot. I think if Glenn's gone, Muji's gone. To me, as much as I think I've liked some of what he's done, those two are definitely attached to the hip, and like Woody publicly has literally been like, that's his sidekick, that's his assistant. So to me, I would have a hard time. I don't think Woody would be like, yeah, we're going to retain the GM that just won 6 games. Like, I don't see that happening.
Look, it's so interesting. I watched the Manish interview with Jake, which I thought was fascinating, by the way.
Yeah,
just to
I gotta watch it.
You need to watch it. Like, you really, like, I have my feelings about Manish, but this interview is really fascinating because you get a little bit of the inner working stuff. And part of me just wonders, like, will the Jets ever be able to, going forward, land the big fish head coach if that's what they really want?
Yeah.
I don't know. And they may have to just cede all kinds of power to him to get him. It's just, that might be what happens.
If they're going to do it, I don't know if you feel this way. If they're going to do that, and they're going to do what the Giants basically just did, which is like everything's handed over to Harbaugh, like, I need it to be for someone that's better than John Harbaugh. I know that's going to be where the last guy at the bar at 3 a.m. and you're holding out hope for the 10. But to me, like, hiring a guy that's just a floor raiser, because Harbaugh has choked a lot in the playoffs for like 13 years now. He's a really good coach. He's a really solid coach that can like have stability around him. You're always going to be relevant. But like, I don't know. To me, like, if the Jets are doing that, it's like, oh, we traded one of our first rounders for Kyle Shanahan and we gave him $30 million. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that to me is like that type of person where it's like, I don't know if Kyle's even a good example because Kyle runs the organization in San Francisco.
Well, use the Mike Tomlin argument. Where is your head on Mike Tomlin?
I love Mike T. I saw someone, I don't know who tweeted that they should offer him like $35 million a year, which felt insane. If Mike Tomlin's going to come here and there was the promise of like they're going to have a top pick quarterback and he's able to get an offensive coordinator that's not stuck in 2006, I'm down. That's awesome. Mike T is going to embrace the year off. He's going to go back and be like, hey, I'm going to go for it on 4th down sometimes. And I'm not going to be the worst person about, any analytics stuff. Like, if Mike Tomlin's able to bring his culture with some new stuff, being out of football for a year, he makes a relationship in media with, whatever team, and they do 9 Rams games, and it's like, oh, I'm going to bring the next Rams guy with me or whoever, just, whatever, for the sake of argument. Yeah, man, I love Mike Tomlin. I've gotten to meet him, and he's as cool as he is on TV as he is in person. I'm just not interested in Mike Tomlin if it's Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin, and we're going to just rerun the entire Steelers staff. And like, yeah, there's an argument to be made the Jets need to get to 10-7 and crawl before they can, go walk before they can run. But if you're going to concede power and do things like that, like, it's my whole argument with the Giants. It's like, you did all this stuff this whole offseason to rebrand, and it's all about Harbaugh and all this different stuff. And like, their staff sucks. It's like Denard Wilson and Nagy, and it's like very underwhelming. I shouldn't say it sucks. It's very underwhelming. They signed Donna Ponte reports to Harbaugh, not to the GM. They kept Shane. It's just a lot of that stuff. That's what I don't want. So if that's what the Mike Tomlin package is, I'm out. If the Mike Tomlin package is like, he's going to come in here and like, they're going to his year off with what happened with McCarthy, because McCarthy was not viewed the same way. He went to Dallas and like he kind of figured it out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he wasn't amazing in the playoffs. I understand that. Dak slides against the Niners. If he doesn't slide and throws the ball away, do they beat the Niners and then they go on a run there? Who knows? Yeah, I love Mike T. To me, like there has to be something about it where it's like I've changed my stance on analytics and I've changed my stance on like being aggressive, because getting the Jets to be a perennial 10-11 win team would be awesome. I just know it would unfortunately go sour by like year two. The Mets argument, right? The Mets got to relevant, and then everyone's like, well, the expectations are World Series now. The playoffs isn't good enough, and they kind of fell back to the pack.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I view it is it's the New York Knicks argument in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. The Knicks, it was really cool. And now it's like, okay, that's being good and relevant's not good enough anymore. Now you got to go win. And if you can't win,
but you remember how bad they were for so long, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like bringing in
the Thibodeau of it, right?
Bringing in Thibodeau and Rose created a franchise that was no longer a laughingstock, right?
Yeah.
And so, look, I'm hoping Glenn figures it out, and I actually think Muji's got upside, so I like him. And again, I'm not. If I'm a betting man, I don't think it's going to work out. But that's just how many head coaches who win 3 games their first year work out. It's not realistic. So I'll root for it. I want him to do it. I'm certainly not a guy sitting on the sideline saying he's the worst human that ever existed and he needs to be fired.
No.
But if they move on from him, I need someone who's going to create a scenario where the Jets are not the laughingstock of the league anymore, and that they are, respected again. So whatever that looks like, and I agree with you, you're ceding all that control. Be very cautious with who you do it for.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
would you rather hire Shane Steichen next year if you have a young quarterback, or Tomlin?
Shane Steichen, young quarterback without ceding all that control, versus
Tomlin, you give him 25 million a year. He has to control the organization, and you're picking 5th.
I would need to understand what Tomlin's plan is on offense.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
It's like that's going to be the argument, right? It's going to be the
it's 100% the argument, right? I mean, that's everything to me, and I guess ultimately we'll probably likely find out. But I don't want to jump there yet. So I guess
I was going to say I'll ask you what they go 6-11, but they lose 5 games in the fourth quarter by 3 points, and the defense is good, it really improved. They're the 16th best defense.
Mm-hmm.
They can't get Ty. They roll with one of the day 3 quarterbacks that's going to get overdrafted and guys I can't stand. But they do some combination of Brissett and I don't know, Nussmeier out, whatever, and they go 6-11, but everything looks improvement, but it's just the quarterback, and they're picking 7th.
I think he gets year 3.
I do too. If the defense is much better and the young guys play well, he's getting year 3, I think, no matter what. I think
he gets year 3. Listen, I think people should not, and I know their schedule is going to be tough.
They doubled the win total.
Listen, their schedule's tough. They've got a really tough for a team it's crazy how hard their schedule is this year. But if you want to talk about the Dak being stacked against a guy, the deck is definitely stacked against him right now. But I don't think they're going to. I think by just default they're a better football team this year. I can't imagine they're bad like they were this year.
No, they can't be worse. And I just they need to do the Fields gets cut the second the league year opens. That type of stuff needs to happen right away. It can't be this to me again. It can't be this subtle, slow. No. It needs to be we've cut. We're letting John Simpson walk. He led the league in penalties. He's a great dude, but the 15-yarders that kill every drive can't happen anymore. We're moving on.
Right.
We've moved on from Justin Fields. That experiment's over. We've traded Jamie and Sherwood with a post whenever. We've traded these guys, and it's we're moving off all the deck's clear. We're building on our young core that we brought in. We're going to use our cap space this year because we have $218 million next year, and stuff like that. And
right.
We got 4+ guys in the draft in the top 44, and we hit on a day 3 guy, and it's oh, that's actually exciting. That's at least wow, we've promised here.
Right. I agree. It'll be interesting. So Let's end with this because it's been great and it's been wide ranging. And I'd be curious where I'd love to talk to you after free agency and draft to see where your head's at on stuff. Let's crystal ball this really quickly.
Yeah.
2 questions. Who's the starting quarterback for 2026? And does Aaron Glenn make it to year 3?
I'm going to say the starting quarterback. I'm going to say the quarterback room is Tyrod is their quarterback 3, comes back on a 1-year deal. He's just like kind of hangs around. He does the Winston thing where he's like the vibes guy. I think they end up with Ty in some fashion. I don't know how it happens. I think one of Arizona, the Rams, or the Jets will end up with Ty. And I think it's either going to be I'll say it's Brissett. They trade for Brissett, and they do the Drake May quarterback room. It's rookie year where it's like he put him in I know it's not the same level of prospect, but he's the Ty Simpson. Brissett starts the first month. 6 weeks, they try to go 2-4, 3-3, steady the ship, and they turn it over to Ty, and he gets an 10 or 11 game runway. I don't know where their bye will be. They play in London. Maybe it's after London or whatever. So I think that, and I think Glenn gets year 3, and I think it's like more fans are happy, but a lot of fans are still disappointed. And I think it's like this weird battle. I think if they don't end up with a young quarterback, I actually think there's a less likely chance that Glenn's back, because it's like I don't know if they can win enough games with a bridge only, and there's not anybody else. I think like the young quarterback might be able to buy him time, like almost where it's like, hey, like, look, dude, he got so much better the last 5 weeks. We finished 6-11, but like, hey, that last 5 games at Ty looked really good. Like maybe we don't need a quarterback in this draft, and we end up with Jeremiah Smith and some whatever. And it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. So I'm going to say as of now, Glenn gets year 3. I think if in 2 weeks or a month time from now, they come out of the league year looking like terrible, I'm probably going to say that he's not back in 27 as of the year starting. But as of now, it feels like the way the staff kind of came together. They're adding people to the analytics staff in the front office. They've added more coaches. They've added some young guys. They've added some, some nerds, as the Badlands Discord likes to call them, from Stanford and stuff like that. I'm only holding out hope that they've raised the floor enough that I think like they maybe let this plan come to fruition, where like it is a 3-year plan, which is what I think they sold Woody.
I agree.
One thing I will caveat is like, I really hope if that's what they sold Woody, and that's the way they're operating, where this is a really big build year, we're going to get all our guys in here and we're going to put all this young talent together. We're going to get better as the year goes on. In year 3, we're going to be a playoff team. I hope he lets them see it out if that's really what was sold. If it was sold as some 5-year plan that'll never happen, then it's not going to happen here. Like that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like if that's the plan, I want to see it through. And if it's not the plan and it's some, and like I said, if it's Anzalone and Meek Robertson and nobody else for the first 3 days of free agency, like I think I'm probably good on Glenn.
Yeah, I'll end with this. This is how I feel. I agree with you that the starting quarterback will be someone that can raise the floor. Brissett makes sense. I said the other week, I said it could be. I think it's either going to be Brissett, Cousins, or Plan B is Mariota. I think he's a Plan B guy.
I just worry with Mariota and Jimmy G. Like on the face of it, they're fine, and they're probably even maybe better than Jacoby. But the issue is that they can't stay healthy. So.
They can't stay healthy. Yeah, and so I think in Brissett's history with Reich makes sense and kind of fits the Reich quarterback. The Kyler Murray stuff's absolutely insane. I will be losing my mind if he's the starting quarterback for the Jets.
Him, Tua. I'm good.
I can't. Man. Yeah, please, enough with these guys, right?
If you want to give again, I said this on the pod the other day. Kyler, Tua, and Watson. I will take your first round draft picks. I will take any of your picks. If the Cardinals said, "Here's our 2 this year and our 2 next year," and you guys got to eat the money, great. I love it. That's awesome. Fantastic. If you think he's playing here, another story. Like Tua, like I'd want the Dolphins 1. Give us the 11th overall pick. We'll eat the huge cap hit, and we'll eat all this money this year. We'll be the laughing stock, and everyone will laugh at us. But we'll have 7 first-round picks or 6.
Yeah, I was going to say that's truly a year 3 plan at that point. So like, I agree with you on that. I think where you and I maybe disagree a little bit, but not a lot here is if it's a true 3-year plan that they sold Woody and Woody's on board. For me, this is just me. Yeah. I'm not drafting a quarterback round 1 or 2. I'm just not. because I don't think they move the needle enough for me to not get, I don't know, get Lemon at 16, get
That's what I'm saying. Ties, the most ideal scenario is some version of where pick 33 it falls, right? End of the 20s, you trade up or you stay put. If Ty's at that spot, that's great value for me. That's exactly where he should be.
I said that too. Yeah. If he's a 33rd pick,
Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart thing, right? It's like
that's fine. So otherwise, I'm like, you know what? Just go get your 4th round swing that you want to take a shot at. Go get your Drew Aller if that's what you want. Go get your Talon Green later in the draft or any of these guys.
I cannot watch Carson Beck anywhere near his team. He's not a draftable player, in my opinion.
No,
I can't. People get mad at Trinidad Chambliss going back for a 6-year. Dude, Carson Beck was in year 7. Still can't throw a ball. And I know we disagree a little bit on this, but like I'm out on Derek Carr because I think there's a lot of reasons, and I detailed this for like over an hour on my pod, so I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. But I really worry that it's like you're doing a lower level version of what you did with Rodgers, where you're like, oh, he'll fix everything, and like he wears on teammates, and I really worry about the effects it could have on a Garrett Wilson, the effects. Garrett Wilson and Olave played together, and like I just don't know. There's no way they haven't talked about like what went on there. And the sneaky thing with Derek Carr, which I think I know everyone's talked about it, but the Saints own his rights, and his deal just comes back to fruition once he unretires. And the Saints are going to want value for him because I don't know what that value is, but like I'm not trading a 3rd round pick for Derek Carr.
No, I don't think he gets more than a 5th round pick, but we'll see.
7th round pick and whatever. Again, like he'll probably end up in Minnesota if he comes back, and one of Carr, they want to go to Minnesota because it's like O'Connell, Jefferson. They're trying to win.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, Will. I mean, the Derek Carr thing. I think until I saw his pod this week when he was delusional about what he wants for his future, I was a little on board.
Yeah.
After he talked, I was like, you know what, whatever. Like, I'm good. Like, and again, for me, for 26, I'm not expecting much. I like to see development. I like to see the team get better. If they play your scenario out, and then I'll let you go. Ty Simpson getting drafted. He starts after like week 5. Like, let's say he does the Jackson Dart play. I will say this. I don't want them to do that personally because I don't see it. You see it more than I do with Ty. They are taking one hell of a swing on their future because if they're wrong on him and they start him,
they're fired.
They're all gone. They actually,
and if they're right, they probably bought themselves 3 years, which is insane. It's like there's such a fine line they're trying to thread of like,
it is.
If Ty works, you have a controllable asset for 4 years, and you can and you have all this cap space. You could build a super team. You literally could.
It's a big swing. I will say that. I don't know if it's a desperate swing, but it's a big swing. So
what I wouldn't do also is I know you're high Mendoza. A lot of people still clamoring. I'm not trading up for Mendoza. I just don't think it's worth it. I think he's a good prospect.
Mm-hmm.
What it would cost to move up one spot. I don't know if I see Mendoza as ever being a top 5 guy in the league. I don't think I see top ties that either, obviously. But if I'm trading up that much capital, I want to make sure I'm getting Burrow, Allen, Mahomes. And you always assume that when you're drafting a quarterback in the 1st round, you always want to swing for the fences. But if you're going to trade up all that capital, like you better know there's a damn near 100% chance. Like I'm getting a legitimate, like he's going to win us 5 to 6 games. Like he's worth 5 or 6 wins.
I get it. I've also said I wouldn't do it now because the amount that they're going to hold, like, first of all, they're not going to do it. The Raiders aren't going to trade it, but going from 2 to 1 and having to give up all that capital is insane.
Because
so I agree.
The capital you gave up, the Bills would have given up less to move from 21 to 7. Like, it's like, that's ridiculous.
No. So I do I love Mendoza? Yeah. Why? He has so many traits and qualities in a quarterback that I want when it comes to the mindset.
Yeah, 100%.
But
I think he's going to be a good player in the league. Like, I think he's going to be like, the Raiders are going to be relevant and they're going to be solid. And I don't think he's Bo Nix. And I don't mean the prospect Bo Nix, but I think like, can he be Bo Nix in the league where it's like, hey, with the right stuff around him, he's never going to hold us back. He's always going to put us in the right situations. He's got a good synchronicity with my coach. We're on the same page, not a lot of turnovers. He's going to protect the football. He's mobile enough. People like him. They revere him, right? The locker room likes him. And like, we could be the 1 seed with him. I just don't know if I see him getting to the level that like it would require me to move 3, 4, 5 first round picks. Like that's insane.
No, I think that's
right.
I think it's malpractice to do it at this point. So we're aligned there. And look, I think at the end of the day, we know the Jets have a plan. Whether it's a good plan or not, we'll find out.
Yeah, we're gonna know pretty quickly here because, like I said, I really feel like people are gonna have a real inclination on what this is gonna look like.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 months is going to be the vibes going into the season. Have a lot of. I said it on a pod like 2 weeks ago, but like if they went and said, you know what, screw the defense, we're gonna just sign defense, trade for defense. We're not drafting defense early. We're taking a receiver at 2. We're going to take Jeremiah Love at 16, and we're going to trade up for Ty at the end of round 1. And we're just going to go all in on offense, this whole young thing. And it's like, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, like I think people would be excited about that. I don't know if it's smart, but I know people would be excited. You know,
yeah. I mean, I said the same thing to my dad. Literally, we spoke earlier today before I got on with you, and I was like, he's like, I want the kid from Alabama. I want something to be excited about. I want, and I get it.
That's what's analyzing about Ty. It's like, it's a realistic option that could give you hope. And like, I think Ty sells hope a little bit. Even if you don't love him as a prospect, I think he's going to say all the right things. Everyone's going to be like, oh, he's the direct. He quite literally could not be more opposite of Zach. Every game he played in was high pressure.
Yeah.
He's not scared of anything and it's tough. And he's like built from all the right cloth and he's like a smart kid that like loves football. The only issue is that he's started 15 games. But I will say one thing. I feel like people think I'm going to be so high on Ty, and it's not about that. Like, I just think it's weird because he's not a guy that came out of nowhere in that aspect. Like, he was a 5-star. He was a top 3 prospect in his class, and like he's the last Saban guy, And I wonder if like part of me is like superstitious. I'm like, does he break the curse? Did we get the Alabama guy that we drafted?
The Alabama guy that breaks the curse, yeah.
Sam broke the chain of like the Jets not having drafted one, and now it's like it's all free. Like, I don't know. So something's gonna have to hit here, right? Like something has to go the Jets' way a little bit.
Well, we will see, my friend. I appreciate. Listen, I think we covered a lot. I appreciate the time, and let's see what happens. But this was great. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Will.
Yeah, thanks so much. Keep up the good work, man.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye.